If you were looking for a way to describe Washington today, political exhaustion, that might be the most apt description. Now, with the shutdown and debt crises now done, at least for the time being, lawmakers nowhere to be found, even as more federal workers finally got back on the job. And Andrew, the big fear you can almost see in D.C. is, okay, we can breathe, but what next? And both sides have shown very little in the way of capitulation that we won't be revisiting this fight for January or February.
We can get to that fight in just a second. Everybody's still breathing the sigh of relief that we didn't go over the cliff this week as everyone tries to assess the damage and the lessons learned in the shutdown and debt limit mess. It is unfortunately all eyes starting to nervously look towards the start of the new year.
3, 2, 1.
It was a reopening celebration this morning at the National Zoo in Washington.
The animals have missed you, the people have missed you. We need you back.
Excited crowds lined up to wait for the locks to come off the gate, and zoo employees enthusiastically welcomed them back. The federal government continues to shake off the shutdown cobwebs as more people get back to work.
For those of us in the National Park Service, these are not jobs for us. These are our passions.
Congress averted a major crisis this time, but the next one could be just around the corner. This week's deal reopened the government, but the funding only goes through January 15th, and it extended the nation's credit limit, but only until January 7th. Texas Senator Ted Cruz was front and center. He rallied conservatives in the fight against Obamacare that triggered the shutdown, and in an exclusive interview with ABC's John Carl, Cruz said he wouldn't rule out going another round, even if that meant another shutdown.
So you would do it again?
I would do anything, and I will continue to do anything I can to stop the train wreck that is Obamacare.
On Wednesday night, President Obama said emphatically there will not be a repeat of this in the new year. His spokesman was asked, how can he be so confident?
The outcome here was, again, good for no one, and in particular, not good for the American people or the American economy.
By the way, even Mitch McConnell, Senate Republican leader, admitting the shutdown was a losing strategy for the GOP, telling a reporter it would not happen again this January. Rich?
First of all, let's get some civics out of the way here, because one thing we've learned in the last really few years is that you don't need a majority to stop anything. And we've learned in the Senate about the 60 rule and about the filibuster, etc. When Ted Cruz says nothing's off the table, but both the minority and the majority leader said this won't happen again, from a practical and from a literal standpoint, can one person or a group really grind something to a halt if they want to?
Well, first off, it was 21 hours in the Senate, and all the senators went to bed.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big a deal, except
this wasn't Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
No,
yeah.
it wasn't. The thing that this whole experience points out is people who say, you know, we need term limits are forgetting you need some veterans who sit down with these younger guys and say, you know, been there, done that in different ways. It's a stupid policy, and let me tell you why. I mean, if someone
But they did that.
No.
They told him that before he did it.
No, but you didn't have enough old-timers there. Someone like a Henry Hyde, you know, a really conservative guy, but everybody loved him. And he would have sat down with a bunch of folks and he would have said, you're well-meaning, I understand where you're coming from. It's a bad strategy and it's going to hurt you. Do not do it.
Isn't that, just that very example, a direct cause and effect of the Tea Party? And I'll give a perfect example. Dick Lugar, senator from Indiana, as respected as they come on both foreign affairs, defense issues. He lost his job in Indiana in a Tea Party primary as if he's not Republican enough. And even the old-timers who are left, they're all scared. Look at Orrin Hatch, for crying out loud. Yeah. He almost lost in a primary here to keep his job. It seems that there is no more safe spots.
That's the real problem. I mean, the real problem is the Republicans should have taken the Senate the last time.
Yep.
They didn't because they had bad candidates who were way over to the right, saying really stupid things. And so, you know, that was the battle over Obamacare, and I don't mean disrespect by calling it Obamacare. The president calls it that, and so they lost the battle. And a veteran would have said, you lost the battle then. You have a law, you fund it, and you say to the president, when laws pass, you enforce them, because he's chosen not to enforce some. You have that kind of dialogue.
I think there's another issue at play here too, and that is inside the echo chamber, the momentum leads to anger. And there's a lot of anger from Republicans and from conservative voters out there that's not just they want to oppose the president or they want to have their policies put in place, but it's that we're so angry about it that it's not, and we're so angry about the policies that are being hoisted upon us. So it's hard to find that middle ground, even when you're being primaried, because you lose some of that ability to talk to people, because the people who put you in office want blood, or at least that's the way they sound.
You know, I know that the speaker's taken some big hits. He knew he was going to take some big hits. I'm pretty convinced he made the decision, okay, guys, you want to do this? Your call, but it's going to fail big time. And he wanted to be on record. But the one thing I knew he would not allow to happen is he was not going to prevent there from being a vote on the debt ceiling. And so he gave them their way in the shutdown. He got his way to make sure there wasn't.
But did he break the fever? And I asked that because I heard a lot of people, no one's going to have a coup against John Boehner. I've heard even some conservative members saying, hey, you know what? He at least let this thing play out, as unproductive as it might have been, and is, I think, an indictment on our system right now, and I think it's going to have some real consequences. That all said, Dominic, does he really get control for January or February? And can he say, this was a teachable moment here. Look what happened. We could have spent the last 2 weeks fairly banging on this president for a terrible rollout of Obamacare. Glitches are putting it politely. We're getting the real numbers right
really
now.
Went after
it
him
was
on
bad.
legitimate
Look where they spent 2 weeks of political capital doing something that turned the nation against them in historic numbers, at least according to Gallup. I just don't know if they try and do immigration reform like they say they want to do. They want to do a farm bill, and they want to have, you know, I guess some
Tax reform.
But tax reform.
Big time.
Can he do any of that when these folks say, no, that's not the lesson. That's not the object lesson after the 2 weeks?
I think the answer to your question, let's take these, 30 or 40 Tea...
I think they're more like 60.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's take the 60 Tea Party folks. It is my contention that they would love to do this all over again in 3 months. The question is going to be the 100 or so other members, Republican members of the House, are they going to be led by this group again, or are they going, and that's where the speaker will have some power if that group, that middle group of Republicans says, we're not going down this road with you again. So that, I mean, and I'm interested in the congressman's take.
Well, one of the things I've learned is that the Tea Party folks are really the sophomore class. They're the class of 2012. I'm told the class of 2010. Mm-hmm. The class of 2012, I'm told, is not like these guys. And so there was already a turn in the last election. So
well, we've even seen it with candidates, Andrew, from Nan Hayworth, et cetera. When she first ran and won, she embraced the Tea Party label. 2 years ago, when she was running for re-election and lost by a narrow margin, she didn't want that label. Now, she's sitting here on her set, even indicting some of those folks, saying that that's not me, you know, that the brand or the level of the tea has changed.
It's also interesting because you and I got messages from a couple of Tea Party rhino groups over the last couple of days, really pointing out and trying to hammer Republicans from our area, including, you know, Peter King, who isn't going anywhere anytime soon, but really trying to hammer any Republican who voted to reopen the government as some sort of horrible, your hands are all over Obamacare now kind of vote. It's going to be interesting to see if that gains any traction. I don't think it will.
So then this comes to the penultimate question for this one, which is there going to be a deal done? Everybody does something if it's in their self-interest.
There will be, but it's going to depend on this, and it's really interesting. First off, Herb Camp, the chairman, not Herb, but Congressman Camp from Michigan, chairman of the Ways and Means, has been working with the Democrat chairman in the Finance Committee in the Senate, and they want a really major tax reform bill. Simplification, lower rates, eliminate the write-offs so you get even more revenue. So we'll get more revenue. The question is, and the president kind of wants that, will Nancy Pelosi allow it, or does she smell blood and says, these Republicans made such a fool, I want to be speaker? Because if the president makes a deal with the Republicans in January, the Republicans probably win.
Well, you know what, and I know we're heavy, but yeah, go ahead.
To be fair, there's also a lot of objection in the Republican Party about more revenues. So
no, but that's going to be the compromise.
No, I know, but there are a lot of Republicans don't want to give in on that end of it either. So there's a chance for both sides to blow this thing up.
Both sides have to be seen to be giving something up.
I've
been meaning to ask this, you'd be the best person. John Boehner waited a long time to get the speaker. Had to broker a lot of deals, had to live in a bunch of different camps. This could not have been fun the last 2 years. Is there a point, and you know the man, and put yourself in his shoes, where you say, this is worse than herding cats. There's a bit of my soul that dies every day. He'll strike a deal with the president. He'll go back. He'll get undermined by his base. He has to play the fool when he knows it's not. He can't win this hand. At what point does he say, no, you know what, I'm not going to carry that message?
Well, I think he's invested too much right now to give up, because there is a possibility there will be a deal, and rather than people looking at him with some discontent, will say, my God, he did it. He did it with the president. And that's why you're right. I mean, some Republicans don't want more revenue, and Nancy Pelosi wants to be speaker, so she doesn't want a deal. Those are the two things.
Yeah.
But
Do we get immigration done too, you think? Is it
yeah,
all part of the same package?
Absolutely.
And I think it's in Republicans' self-interest even more than Democrats to get it done. By the way, George Bush's plan was even more ambitious than what we're talking about
Such
now.
optimists on the panel.
Hey,
Such
I am optimist. It's nice to get somebody with you two cynics always.
And you said it's their own self-interest. Republicans, their own self-interest.
Exactly, fair enough.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that if everybody wins. All right, we're going to jump to a break here. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about an interesting poll as it comes to where we are. I'm sorry, jump ahead. Well, the first thing we're doing when we come back is Andrew had a fascinating interview, and it has to do with history. If you think the conversations we're having about Obamacare are the first times ever, you want to think again. We've been down this road before many times in history. You'll be surprised just how similar some of the language was then to what it is now. Stay with us.